What is going on, guys? It is PetesMaGeats here, back with another Throne and Liberty video. Today I wanted to go over how to increase your chances of getting items on boss drops. So they have an article on their website that explains the loot distribution rules and how the system works in game. Let's start off with contribution. Contribution is earned by either doing damage against the enemy or healing friendly players. This means that the more that your healer will heal you when you're low health in a fight, the more contribution the healer will get. And they recently increased the amount that healers and tanks get in contribution in a recent patch. Now, the main thing to note for specifically peace mode bosses is that it is based on individual player contribution. For example, assuming you had 3% contribution, you have a 3% chance of getting a drop. So the more percent contribution you have to a boss individually, the more chance you have of getting that drop. Now, that being said, how do we put it into practice in the game? Well, the most obvious answer is going to be your gear. For example, if you have a PvE versus a PvP setup, your gear will ultimately affect how much DPS or individual contribution you get on the boss. So let's take a look at a website like Maxroll and take an example of the crossbow daggers, which is what I'm running. Notice in the PvP setup, you're going to have things like the tunic of resistance, which offers hit chance, and this cloak, which gives evasion, both of which are PvP skills and you're going to be using on a PvP build. However, on a PvE build, you might have something like the swirling essence robe, which increases just your damage and heavy attack, as well as the supreme devotion, which will give you that cooldown speed and mana regen that you want for more DPS on the boss. If you want to increase your chances of getting a drop, then you want to be running a PvE focused build to give you the most DPS output and individual contribution. Let's look into the new system that came out not too long ago, and that is the runes. Now, what you'll find is that you're going to have certain runes that increase for boss damage. Like you have boss heavy attack chance and specific boss chances. These could potentially try and increase your DPS on the boss, so try to play around with your rune setups. Something like skill damage boost is always going to be solid. Furthermore, with the runes, say for example, in your rune synergy list, you can potentially focus things like the boss bonus damage synergies. Say for example, you could put boss bonus damage on your weapons, your bracelets, and your other pieces of gear can just have other things to help your DPS, such as cooldown speed. So having PvE focused rune setups will also increase your DPS. Now that we got gear out of the way, let's talk about what items you should be using. For starters, before every single boss fight, you should be using quality stellarite. This increases your weapon damage by 15%. When you're killing any boss, you want to always pair a utility food with an attack food. Utility is this boot looking icon, they just changed it. Attack has the sword. Usually how this would look is you would eat scorpion tail fritters in addition to whatever the boss is. Whether it's undead, you got the ardent jelly, demon damage, human damage. I believe the only thing they don't have is construct damage. I will add a picture on screen right now for what food you should be eating according to the race. Next, let's talk about team building. This is also going to be the most important aspect. For a solid team, you're definitely going to want one tank and one healer at the very least. The rest of the slots can be filled with DPS, or you can have an extra tank slash buffer and then the rest DPS. Everybody in the party should have any ability that can increase DPS or just adds any bonus damage to the party. If you have multiple classes with the same buffs, then you can have them talk to each other so they can rotate their buffs. After you have a PvE setup, you got proper runes, you use the proper food and stellarite combo that I showed you, and you have a very good team with all of your highest combat power players. Then the final piece of the puzzle is for the guild leader to use their boss bonus damage. All these things in combination will pretty much allow you to get the highest DPS output and most contribution when it comes to doing world bosses and arc bosses, and allowing you to get the highest chances of getting drops. Now let's quickly touch up on arc bosses. For Tevent, his right shoulder has its own health bar, and when the players destroy it, I believe it increases the loot pool. For Queen Belender, it's on her back. Ultimately, I might make a future video on exact guides on the Archbosses, so I'm not going to go too in depth on that, but rather just tell you how to increase your drop chances by broadening their loot pool for each respective boss. Also, I should mention that these peace bosses have different loot drop rules than these war bosses, and I will probably make a separate video on war contribution. This video is going to be mainly just focused on PvE content drops. And that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the advice. Please leave a like and comment if this helped you out. I would really appreciate a subscribe because I'm trying to get over 500 subscribers. Likewise, share with your friends and guildies. My future videos will include making a PvP focused loot distribution guide, the Arc boss guides, and all the food combos that you can do for max food efficiency in the game. Hope you guys enjoyed and stay tuned. Peace.